Hey guys, welcome back. Steve Dempster from Guitar Evolutions, and we are going to explore the second video in this little three-part series on basically what do you see when you look down on your fretboard. And the principle behind this is simply what you currently think of or see, visualize when you're looking at your fretboard completely determines the level at which you can play, because you see or you don't see a whole variety of options available to you when you're playing. So we're going to check that right after this. Well, welcome to the channel, Guitar Evolutions, which is all about helping guitarists make connections between concepts so that the experience that they have as they learn the guitar is a little bit more logical than just grabbing an idea here, an idea there, and trying to make sense of everything. And so we want to prevent overwhelm. That's what this channel is all about. And what we're looking at today is a continuation of video 1, which if you haven't checked that one out yet, you can link to it, or I have made a link to it in the notes below. You can check it on the card above. And but let's get started. Get my guitar, get my pick. We have volume and we're good to go. So a quick review of the first video was simply that depending on what you see when you look down at this D minor 7 chord, that will completely determine to what extent you feel you can do something with that. And when I say do something with it, for a lot of players it has to do with being able to play perhaps some licks around the chord or riffs. And so if you only see a shape, you're very limited in what you could do. You could, of course, play the notes of the chord, the D, the A, the C, the F, and the A, another A. You could do that and build something from it. But you're only re-expressing the chord because you're just playing the notes of the chord, the arpeggio, if you will. Just those notes. And we explored those notes in the previous video. So again, if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. And then come back to this one and we'll carry on. So that's the first thing you could see, shape. The second thing you can see, hopefully, is that the chord has a root associated with it. Now the term root is a way of expressing, of all the notes that make up the chord, there's one around which all the notes gravitate to. It's the centerpiece, if you will, of the chord. It's the note upon which the chord is named. So we have the chord D minor 7. We know it's made up out of the notes D, F, A, and C, played in many different manifestations, if you will, on the fretboard. D, F, A, C. You can play it anywhere you like. And the D note serves as the root. In traditional musical training, if you were to draft these notes up on a musical staff and stack them so they're as close together as they can be, the note that's at the bottom is the root note. That's why it's called the root note. It's like the bottom of the tree. But you'd have to see that in standard written notation if you don't believe me. The third thing that you might see is actually the notes of the chord. So you don't just see the shape, but you actually understand what notes make it up. So if you make the shape, as you look down upon it, you're seeing a D, that's an A, that's a C, that's an F, it's another A, and we could even add this C at the top. We could go, it's just another way of playing the same chord. Okay? So that's what we basically covered in the first video, and I started to hint at the idea that given that you see the notes of the chord, and given that you know the chord is functioning as the 2 chord in the key of C major, that implies that to some extent, ideally, you would have an awareness of where the notes of C major are along your fretboard. Now you could play it in scales all over the fretboard, or you could just noodle around the fretboard, but only hit the notes of C major. Okay, so that's where we're sort of sitting right now. Now, in today's video, we're going to take the same D minor 7 chord, and we're ultimately going to be moving from that to an A minor chord. A minor anywhere you know it. It does not have to be that A minor. It could be, I should say A minor 7, that's what I meant. It could be D minor 7 to A minor 7, same position, 5th position. 5th fret of the guitar, first finger sits there. That's the definition of a position on the guitar. I could go from this chord to this A minor. And so anywhere you want is fine. But for demonstration purposes, so that you can see it really well, I want to go from this D minor 7 to that A minor 7. And the reason why I want to do these 2 chords is I want to show you how easy it actually is to be able to create what some students refer to as walking bass lines, or perhaps creating a lick in between the chords. Whatever the case may be, something that enlivens their chord strumming experience, so they're not just always playing chords, although some songs that's just fine for them. So we're looking for some extra creativity here. What I want you to be able to be aware of is, number 1, the notes of the D minor 7 chord, especially the root. It's an important note. And the notes of the A minor 7 chord, especially the root. Sorry, it's an important note. Making sense so far, I hope. So, I've often talked about the idea that the chord, keep in mind, this is in the back of your brain. I often call it the lizard brain. It's sitting back there just stewing in case you need to draw it forward to use it. It just sits back here. This knowledge of the D minor 7 chord functioning as the 2 chord in the key of C major means that this chord is effectively surrounded all over the fretboard by the notes of C major, which include the notes that make up the chord. So everything's connected, everything's related here. This is not play a chord, then a lick, and somehow the 2 events are separate. They're, in a sense, they're expressing the same thing 2 different ways. The thing they're expressing is the key of C major. This expression just happens to be called D minor 7, and it's the 2 chord in the key of C. This expression is called A minor 7, and it also sits within the key of C major and functions as the 6 chord. C, D, E, F, G, A, 6 notes in. Again, if some of this material is not familiar with you, check the card above. I've got a whole playlist that covers this sort of basic theory, if you will. I don't call it theory, I call it analysis. So if you're a little rusty on that, go check that card, that series of videos. I believe there's 12 of them there. And so those 2 chords are like islands that sit in an ocean of C major. Now if you can hold that metaphor in your mind, here's an island, and what you want to do is get into the ocean. You want to get off the island and get into the ocean and paddle your way to this island. But you want to do it in a manner that doesn't capsize you on the way there, throw you off course. So the way to think about it is to realize that you can connect this chord with that chord, or that island with this island, using the notes of C major. Now there are some assumptions being made here, obviously. To some extent, I'm assuming you have some familiarity with where the notes of C major sit. Let's say up to the 5th fret anyway, so in this area of the fretboard. And if that's lacking, then what I'm going to talk about may not make a lot of sense to you right now. So it has to be, that skill has to be brought up a little bit for you to be able to move around this ocean in a confident manner, knowing that all the notes you're hitting are the notes that belong in the key of C major. And all of those notes are available to you to connect this island to that island. I hope it's making sense so far. And I hope you've had a few aha moments with how simple things get if you take the learning of a certain concepts, in a bit of a logical order. That's an important feature. If you grab this idea and work on it for a little while, then that idea and this idea, they're all good ideas, but they're on the surface, you can't perceive the connection that's going on between them. And I'm all about connecting things together. It makes learning the guitar so much easier and less overwhelming. In other words, you won't quit. You'll keep at it. Let's start off with the D minor 7 chord. And let's make sure we know the notes that are in that chord. The D, the F, the A, the D, the A, the C, F, and A. That's what makes up that shape. The shape of any chord is based on the notes that comprise it, that make it up. Nobody woke up on a Tuesday morning and came up with that shape out of the blue and said, "Behold, I have just created a chord and I shall call it D minor 7. There's obviously a logic behind how these things get constructed. So anyway, we'll start with the root note. The root note is a D, and I want to get to A minor 7. I'm going to just assume the chord shape is okay for you and that we're heading down to the chord, in this case, to grab an A note. So we want to get from a D note, the root of D minor 7, to the A note, which is the 5th string open, of A minor 7. And we're using the ocean of C major to get there. So we have a D. If you know where the notes are, C is a whole tone below, 2 frets lower. B is a semitone lower. And that leads directly into the A note. So in a very simple form, you could go, I'm just making the rhythm up here. Okay. Now, you're going to come back up to D minor 7 again, then you can follow the same path that you took getting there in the first place. Little rhythm. Little articulation. You see how that's working. Now, even though you're heading toward this A minor 7 chord, which is physically lower down the fretboard, there's no reason why you can't use some extra notes that go above the D, above the root, just for a moment, and then track your way back down. This is where the art of noodling, so to speak, comes into play, where you have to learn to pick up your instrument, sometimes in a non-formal practicing mindset, just to noodle with the idea. I could start on a D, I could move up to the E. There's no reason why I can't skip all the way down to the B, and then up to the C, and then play the A. There's no rule that says you have to go down alphabetically in a stepwise fashion. You need to be creative. At least it's more fun to be creative. So I could do this. Okay? That's cool. Now what you do with it, again, will depend on, have you had experience doing hammer-ons and pull-offs? Have you had experience practicing your slide technique? All of those sorts of things just add a whole new layer of character to the riff, which make it more interesting to listen to and more interesting to play. From a technical point of view, it can be a little more challenging. So, you know, you play within the realm that you're comfortable with, and then you make a note to yourself, but I'm going to practice my hammer-on technique or my pull-off technique, and I'm going to practice my slide technique. And, you know, depending on how progressive you want to be, you could even maybe tap those notes if you wanted to. How they get expressed is up to you. That they do get expressed, you pick and choose them, for the time being, from the key of C. You see it on the fretboard, you're aware of it. Let's go to the next note of the chord, which is an A. Again, I want to get from that A, and maybe I'll stay on the same string and I'll get to the E note that's within the chord. That's called the fifth of the chord. Okay? So I might envision a track that takes me like this. I could go, now what? Oh my gosh, my brain is frozen. What do? I play the A, I go down to G, I came up to A. What comes before G? Oh yeah, F. I have to go there if I'm going to go there. And then maybe back to the G, down to the E. As opposed to, you know, you're just letting your fingers kind of go where they feel like going. At the beginning, that will cause some trouble because you're going to hit notes that don't belong in the key. It doesn't always mean they're going to sound bad. This is something you have to get comfortable with. You may have hit a note that doesn't officially belong in the key, but it sounds really cool. In my world, use it. Then come back and try to figure out why it worked. But that's another video. For now, strictly key of C major. So let's see what we can do here. Same rhythm basically. Wasn't the most interesting thing, but you get the idea. Let's go to the C note. Let's do the same thing. And this is really fun. I mean, you could just sit for a nice afternoon on a Saturday and just, you know, the note is a C. I can go up to D. I could even go up to E if I want to, and then come way down to B, to A, to G, to A, and I end up on another root. It's an A note. Good time to mention that root notes are not always found as the lowest note of the chord that you're playing. They can often be found within the body of the chord as well, and they're still considered a root. So I'm landing here in that lick, but I don't want to end there because the note that I'm looking for is the G of A minor 7. If you look carefully again at the notes, you have an A, an E, a G, that's the minor 7, and then you have the minor 3rd, a C, and then another E. And again, all this depends on how you finger your chords and how you want to manipulate moving from one to the other. Don't forget the big picture. It's not about me showing you how to play licks to get from one chord to the other. It's to get you to experiment with creating licks, moving from one chord to the other, with your knowledge of the key of C in the background of these two chords. The two chords are islands, and they're sitting in the ocean of C major. That's the name of the ocean. Okay, so we can do this now. We can go... I don't like that. That didn't work. I'm really just noodling at this point, but I'm grabbing notes from the key of C. You're getting the concept, and remember that that concept only makes sense to you right now because of previous things that we've talked about earlier. Not that you've had any mastery of those things. Your fretboard knowledge regarding the notes on the fretboard may not be complete yet. So you are limited in what you can play. But you can play. You can create licks between chords, and you understand at least one way of doing it, which is what I'm demonstrating here. There are other ways of thinking about how to do it, but this one works just fine. Let's start from the F note in the chord and see what happens there. Oops. You could, if you wanted to, I mean, of course, I can repeat the same process from the highest note of the chord, which is an A. And I would do the same thing, A to B maybe, A, B, C, down to G, back to A, to F, down to E, good to go. Okay, so let's just try it, see what happens. If you want to thicken things up a little bit on the upper strings, if you're inclined to make some licks around those strings and not the lower ones, why don't you double up 2 strings and see how that sounds? So you could go from that A and this F, and then from, I don't know, this B and this G, and then G and E, and then F and D, and then E and C. All of those are available to you. Let's give it a try. This is a very cool thing to be able to do. Now, you know, I'm making some flubby sounds and stuff because I'm just doing this on the fly. But if I rehearse it and practice it and come up with a lick that I really like, then obviously I'm going to keep repeating it, and I'll use it as much as I can in my own music. And maybe someone else hears it and they want me to show them how to play that lick. And then they show it to someone else, and all of a sudden it becomes a standard that every guitarist needs to know. There's a bunch of those kinds of licks out there, but that's not the point. The point is that you can create these things no problem. Now I'm demonstrating it from here to there. There's no reason. You can do the same thing from this D minor 7 to this A minor 7. But chances are your lick material will be a little closer together. So you could play D minor 7. Those notes are available to you to do it. Now, in a more common scenario, I think you'll see a lot of people who do stuff like this all the time. Very common. Where are those notes coming from? People ask this all the time. How do you know what notes to play? If you're only seeing shape and that's it, then you have to wait for somebody to show you what to do in between the chords. You can play G7, back up into C. That's where those notes are coming from the C of the key of C, the ocean of the key of C, or just the key of C. To do that, you have to have an awareness of where those notes are located. So if anybody comes to you in guitar world and says to you, oh, come on, man, you don't need to learn that stuff. Just get some licks, get the minor pentatonic scale under control, and you're good to go. The thing with that is they're sort of partially right. It gets things going really quickly. It's exciting. You get that real cool guitar sound right away. It's all very good. But at some point you are going to have to transition from just knowing where to put your fingers on what strings, what frets, and know what it is you're actually doing so that you can create what we just did in this video. It's all about making connections between concepts. Let's look at the big picture now. You need to know, in this instance, you need to know the C major scale. But any major scale will do. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, or along one string, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, or in a certain position, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. You've got to know that, not just be familiar with it. Once that's in place, and maybe just focus on getting really good at doing that in this location of your fretboard. Just take it in small steps and stay there for a while. When I mean a while, it could be months you stay there. You don't have to venture somewhere else and get all, too frustrated too quickly. So you get comfortable with C major in that zone. In our case, we have a 2 chord in the key of C major, D minor 7, and we have a 6 chord in the key of C major. And we want to figure out how to get from that chord to this chord in a cool song that we are writing. So maybe it's oh no. And everything you're adding to those chords are notes that come from the key of C. Couldn't be more simple. I hope that makes sense to you. If you found this video helpful, you know what to do. Like, share, press the notification button so you can receive a notification that these new videos are out. And if you're new to the channel, I welcome you. We're all about helping you make connections between the concepts you're learning so that the learning is not overwhelming. Until I see you in the third video, Steve Dempster, Guitar Evolutions, learn strong.